I would like to ask you, what is the real symptoms of binge eating?
So there are a couple of things where you can say that someone is a binge eater, because from time to time overeating, it doesn't mean that you're a binge eater. So regularly eating a couple of nights, usually nights in a week, big quantities of food in one sitting, like, imagine all your meals into one, like that big amount, an even bigger amount. And that is happening regularly. So the regularity is important, the big quantities, it's always done in secrecy. You never binge really in front of other people. You're always binging on foods that normally are somewhat forbidden or you don't want other people to see. After that comes the big guilt. So it's not like you're okay with what you have eaten. You have very big, guilt and shame for what you have done. And as a consequence of that, usually comes this repair behavior. Sometimes abuse of laxatives, purging, over-exercising or compensating in some way for what you have done. But it has to be a big amount of food in one moment. You're not enjoying it, you're just eating a big amount of food.
Yeah. So what you compensate with when you're eating?
Whatever is, but you compensate whatever is like bothering you, I would say. Because binge eating can be a consequence of very restrictive diets. Like, you don't eat and then you binge, which is like an almost, I would say, a natural response. Or it can be a response for an unmet need, a trigger, or anything like that. Like you're filling the void of something else which is bothering you. And you don't really know how to get out of that state of feeling uncomfortable in the moment. So your solution is to numb it. Or to distract yourself also. Like, when you have intrusive thoughts about something and you're like, I don't want to think about this, but they're still coming back. So there is a very easy solution, which is to play around with food in front of the TV for hours and hours and just
you feel like you are.
Yeah, you feel comforted in the moment, and then afterwards you will feel worse, of course, because it's a big amount of food. It doesn't sit well, but in the moment it will give you a high and something to do and not think about what's really bothering you.
How long must the symptoms persist to be diagnosed this disorder?
Which disorder? Any of them?
For example, bulimia.
Oh, listen, the moment you start purging after meals, there is an issue. Like, you don't have to be diagnosed to know that you are bulimic. Like, diagnosed you will get if you go to the doctor, but there are way too many people who are engaged in those kind of, activities like purging, whether it's laxatives, over-exercising, or just pure purging, that have never been diagnosed, but they are absolutely bulimic. So there is no time frame, like how many times it needs to happen. The moment you start engaging in this, you have an issue with food and you can be considered bulimic.
When people come into you to make this therapy session, you're not asking how long you have it.
No. I mean, the people that come to work with me as a coach will mostly be in the era of yo-yo dieting, restricting, binging, and then somewhere along the line, they have also purged, maybe, not all of them, as a form to get rid of the calories that they have binged. It's just like one of the mechanisms how they do it. But I don't really need to know on the first day what is it for how long that they have. They will tell me, like, for 20 years I have tried to lose weight and then I gained and then sometimes I purged, and then they open up. But I don't need to know exactly the number of times it has happened to be able to put them in some time frame. No.
What therapy usually helps? What therapy you recommend or you use?
I mean, people do CBT quite a bit. They also
what is CBT?
Cognitive behavioral therapy, like changing the way, like the thoughts. But you can also get help from anyone who is working with disorders when it comes to food. Like, is it a psychologist that specialized in that, psychotherapy, even doctors that have experience obviously in that. Some people who are diagnosed and need medication, they will go, of course, to the doctor, psychiatrist. You have a range. But I believe that nowadays the issue is that the people who have a disorder don't really want to admit it. So, for example, they will go to a fitness coach or a nutritionist who is not maybe specialized in this, and they will say, I want to lose weight. But these people should not be losing weight. They should be healing from a poor relationship with food. So if behind the scenes they are over-exercising, under-eating, overeating, purging, the last thing they need is a new diet. But they might trick the system because maybe they, let's say, quote unquote, don't look like they need help, you know?
With this diagnosis, they don't look really skinny, or they look
most of the
normal?
people don't. Like, that's an extreme. You don't see that many people that have 35 or 230 kilos. Everyone is in the range. And then according to whatever standards of where you live or what, you know, decade you live in, like, you might be considered more or less according to beauty standards. But in general, most of the people are functioning quite normal in society. So if someone has, I'm just saying now, like, let's say 15 kilos to lose, you know, and you might not know that behind the scenes they're doing some things which are very distorted.
I know some people that they are going to restaurants, they order food what actually they allow themselves at the moment, and then they go to the store, buy what they don't allow, and go
binge.
home,
Yes.
eat binge, and make themselves vomit.
Of course, yeah, that's usually how it goes. Because even in that restaurant, you never wanted to eat what you ordered. I mean, there are two scenarios, but let's say this one. You order what you are supposed to eat, or you're ordering safe foods because you're afraid if you order those unhealthy, unsafe foods that you might go overboard, and then, you know, there are people around you in general. So how
to
you
impress,
will be,
people around.
it's not even to impress, it's to control that you don't binge in front of them. Yeah, like, it's not a matter of like, look at me, I'm eating healthy. No one cares about that. You care that you don't binge. Because if you order a salad, you're safe. But if you order pizza, what if you want more and more
So
and
it's
more?
also
It's a form of control.
You impressing people around you that if you binge pizza, burgers, everything, all this food you actually want,
That's not how it works. No. If you do that, that's to show people how normal you are, not to impress. But like, for example, if you are someone that is known to be always on a diet and never eating pizza, you know, and then let's say you have your binge weekend, you might say to your friends, let's go and have pizza. They will be a little bit surprised because normally you don't eat it, but that's your way of steering the conversation that you are somewhat problematic. And then you say, no, you see, I eat pizza from time to time. Like, just to steer away from you. Because usually you are the center of conversation when you are too strict with your diet, or too much, you know, avoiding certain foods, or not going out, or not trying new foods, always the safe stuff. People will say, come on, just have a slice of pizza from time to time. And you say, no. Most of the time you say no. When you say yes, that's usually to kind of back off from your back, all these people. Yeah.
Very confusing.
It's not confusing as much for the person who is doing that, because it's a tactic. Sometimes you avoid people because you don't want to be forced to eat, okay? And sometimes when you go out, you order the safe stuff because you are known as like the healthy person, and you are afraid if you order anything else, you will binge, and they will be like, but I thought that you are eating healthy. Other scenarios, when you are in your binging phase, you might go all in with your friends just to kind of prove to them that, like, I'm also normal, don't worry about me, everything is fine. You see, I'm eating. Where in fact, maybe tomorrow you will start again with not eating at all. So it's a mechanism how you also manipulate a little bit the environment, you know, because you don't want to be the focus. And you will be the focus in your family or group of friends. You will be the focus if people are noticing that you and the food, something is a bit off. You know?
And after you feel guilt, when you've
massive guilt.
But how to cope with this guilt?
Well, I mean, normally if you start working with or towards the guilt must mean that you have done something wrong. That's the feeling. Like, I have eaten something that I should not have eaten. Okay, first of all, you need to leave the room where you were and kind of move that foods away, because we have a tendency to also look how much we have eaten and calculate calories to be able to compensate. You don't do that, but the guilt can only come come in a bit of a less intensity if you do understand that it's a consequence of binge eating, which is a consequence of something else, which is what no one does. You feel guilty because of the food, but that would mean that you did something wrong. You didn't do actually anything wrong. You just didn't assess what has happened before. So for example, if you say, I haven't eaten sweets in 3 weeks and then I had chocolate and then everything went to hell, you need to assess that to understand when I don't allow myself to eat chocolate for weeks, there is a risk of binge eating. When I don't assess my triggers, when I don't assess my emotions, there is a risk of eating. Yeah, you know, or like if I'm left alone and the pantry is full of sweets, this and that, there is a risk and I need to kind of assess all of that. People don't do that. People, when they binge, they focus only on how much they have eaten. That's not important. Yeah, that's not important. Why does it matter if you ate 1,000 or 1,500 calories more? Who cares? Anyway, both of them were too much and not needed. But if you don't want to repeat this, you need to understand why it happened. Then you feel less guilty when you understand that it's not about the food. It's about the thoughts that you had when you had that chocolate, that you're doing something wrong and that led you. It's the thought that now I can have it and who knows when next time. So again, now let me eat a lot because I don't know, maybe another 2 months has to pass before I can eat it again. You know, this is what you need to work on, not how much you have eaten. That's not so important.
Can actually shifting focus from the friction or the food on something like favorite activity or a relationship with loved one help in therapy?
To an extent. You cannot mask forever and find some other activity. I mean, people will tell you like, oh, run, journal, whatever. Yes, there are many activities that you can do to steer your mind because the urge for binge eating from time to time will really go away. Like it's not going to be present all the time, you know? And if you engage in some other activity, if you slow down, you might be able to do that. That will not always work because let's say if something triggered you and now you found a new activity, this trigger is still very much alive. Like it's not going to disappear because you decided to go for a run. You come home, it's back there, the same thought. Let's say you have a fight with someone. That's fight and how you feel about that fight and how that person made you feel in that fight. It's not going to change.
What do you recommend when in this situation? What do you recommend?
You need to deal with the fight. You need to talk to that person. You need to solve the source
but if it's
of
like
the problem.
Problematic relationship, I don't know, some toxic relationship, but people can really talk with themselves, how a person who has this disorder can help own self.
I mean, you can help yourself also by finding the substitute. That is number one. You have to find other things in life that give you joy and pleasure and calm you besides food. And that's only in the moment. But the deep work will be, why are you in a toxic relationship? That's making you feel the way it makes you feel, that you need to numb and soothe yourself with food. Most of the people don't binge, you know, for any other reason rather than, let's say, emotional. And when we say emotional, people think it's something, you know, intimate, like in a romantic relationship. It doesn't have to be. It can be friendships, family, friends, whatever. But on some level, some of your needs are not being met. In that toxic relationship, your needs are not being met. You are not being heard, you're not being validated, you're gaslighted, you're whatever. Something is going on, which is making you feel, let's put it mildly, uncomfortable. But it can be much worse. So how do you deal with it? You are not talking to that person who is the source, for whatever reason. You go home, you feel horrible that you're in that relationship, that again the same fight has happened, that again you feel the same way, and then you eat.
And start like blaming yourself.
Of course, that's the part of it. But that's another set of things. But then how do you sit with that? Yes, of course, now you can say, I'm going to call a friend and talk to her about it, and maybe the urge will go away. Maybe not. But the truth of the matter is that trigger that you are not paying attention to, that keeps poking you, it will continue poking you until you solve it. Like, it doesn't disappear. And that's why going on a diet has nothing to do with emotional binge eating. It doesn't matter if you have 75 or 70 kilos, you still have the same problems. So unless you figured out how to deal with that toxicity, for example, the toxicity stays. And there is a very high chance that the reason why people regain the weight is not only because they were on diets that are, you know, that were very restrictive, but also because they never learned a different way to deal with their problems. They just focused on the body. Like, you know, like I will deal with my body, and then when my body is great, then I will deal with my life. That's not really how it works. Like, you don't know how to deal with your life other than using food.
But can actually possible to have recovery from this disorder, from this binge eating, and staying in the same relationship, to not break up, like to fix.
Then you have to fix the relationship, or you can always stop binge eating. It doesn't have to do much with the relationship, but some things in that relationship will have to change, for sure. Yes, you will. It's not because you stop binge eating that you will be less impacted by the toxic relationship. You will be impacted in some other ways, maybe not with food, but in other ways, yes. But so these two are not necessarily always connected, like your remission and the relationship itself. But you will have to deal. Otherwise, you will find another mechanism to deal with the toxic behavior. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to accept toxicity. You might not eat, okay, but maybe you will drink. Maybe you will over-exercise. Maybe you will, I don't know. You will have to find always something until you solve the source, you know? And that's how addictions always switch.
But can actually, when you recovered, and can actually binge eating can remain remission?
Yes.
In remission.
Yes. Many people have recovered from binge eating for years and years and years, and they have found ways to cope. They have found ways to eat, which is the main two things: how to assess when something is about to happen, understand themselves. Absolutely, yes. But it's a practice. You have learned through many, many years to eat when things get tough. Now you have to unlearn that. Same practice with different tools, different, strategies, let's say. But one of the main thing is that the strategies is one thing, going to the source is another thing, and dealing with how you eat and wanting always to lose weight is a third thing. Because that one is for the majority of the people why they binge, because they don't eat anything.
It's so good how you talk about this with a smile on your face, but you're actually going through this.
I went through that.
And how now? How do you feel really better now? You're not controlling what you eat, or you? How can you share your experience?
I had this problem for so many years, so I know that. What I mean when I say the problem, I mean like not eating and overeating, binging and restricting and all this kind of stuff. And I know that it came from very restrictive diets. I removed everything from my life. I will not do that again. But I'm very conscious of what my body needs. My body intuitively doesn't need pizza, donuts, and ice cream every single day. Sometimes it needs that, but not every day. So I can balance the two. It needs sometimes alcohol, sometimes it needs water, But I will not reach for food when I'm emotionally down. It will not happen.
But how your life changed from time when you were in this situation?
But there was no life then. Like, I don't even know what life I can talk about. Of course, I had very, very nice moments with my friends, with my loved ones, and so on and so forth. But my focus was only on the food. Like, the food is the central part of your life. How much I can eat, what I'm allowed, what I'm not allowed, how to burn off, how many calories in this. Then you binge, then you're in a cycle again. Like, it was all about the food.
Cycle.
It's a cycle, but honestly, it becomes like, when you see in movies how a drug addict, just everything revolves about getting the drug and then getting high and then going up and down. It's the same with food. Your brain is never calm. My brain is now calm when it comes to food. I can be more or less aware what I have in my house to eat, but I will not make a drama out of it. Like, if we have this or that, I have my preferences, but I don't make the food as the central things. Food was way too many years the central part of my life to control. Like, if I can go out or not, or what will be at this party or that party, and can I, like, it's too much. So now I don't care who serves what. I really don't care. If I want to eat it, eat it. If I don't, I don't, and it's done.
I think you get exhausted of this, only of thinking about, can you allow yourself to eat this or not?
That's why it's a mental disease. That's why you will not, and this is the key thing, you will not see too many physical symptoms. I mean, you will see some if you really dig deep, but like in general, people will not notice. But you will you will without a doubt be mentally exhausted from this noise and this crazy voice that's telling you, what should be done or shouldn't be done.
Could it be related the fact that people with eating disorder, food used to be as a reward or abuse? Like, when you were a child, mom say you have to finish this food, or
family plays one of the biggest parts in how you will, what kind of relationship with food you will develop. And so I think that kids like food, especially sweets. It's normal, and it's very easy to manipulate through food with your kids, like as a reward, as a punishment, And the problem is that it's always very particular foods. Let's take the chocolate, right? Good grades, you get the chocolate. You don't clean your room, you don't get the chocolate. So the chocolate is put on a pedestal as it's something more than what it is, which is a treat. So you pick up a lot of these rules. These foods we eat, when we are good. These foods we're not allowed. These foods only when guests come. This food only for holidays, right? And so you go to adulthood, but you also pick up a lot of new experiences and diet culture, and then you become a grown-up who also is waiting for a specific moment to reward themselves with food. The problem is that the foods that you use as reward are not the foods you eat every day, so you will binge. If you wait to get, to pass an exam, you don't pass an exam every single day. But when you do, then we have the cake, the pizza, the sushi, the whatever, in big quantities, because it's not going to happen anytime soon. So you basically just copy the model that you had as a child. But also I would say that in some cases, adults are very rebellious. And if they had very, very strict parents, they have a tendency to be like, well, no one is controlling me now, and I can eat whatever I want. So I will just eat whatever I want. And then they eat everything that they were not allowed to eat at home, that was forbidden, a little bit as this kind of, I'm my own person, I can do whatever I want. They are harming themselves like that, for sure. But if they had that kind of environment, it can backfire, even when the parents had the best intentions. Like you have parents who are like, I genuinely thought that not having sweets in my house was a good thing. It was a good thing according to your beliefs that you had as a grown-up about chocolate. The child, you have put on the child those beliefs, and they had zero bad experience up to that point with chocolate, right? So then the child will be like, well, in my house we don't eat chocolate, and then they will try the chocolate. They will like it in 99.9% of the case, but because it's not allowed in their house, they will become secretive or hide or eat only at friend's house or buy that with pocket money or something like that. Yeah. And they will feel bad because they're doing something that the parents are not allowing. And now for them, the chocolate is this item which is not very okay to eat, sometimes very fast, big amounts, and they will continue that in adulthood.
Yeah, but for example, I have son, he's 14. I don't forbid him to eat sweet, but sometimes he doesn't have limits. And how to say in a way that he won't have in the future these problems with the food, or he thinks that he eat and then he feel guilt,
Yeah, but you need to, with the kids and the sweets and all this kind of stuff, at the end of the day, you are still the parent, and you should know how much of that you still have in the house, how you serve it, where they eat it, because
usually outside.
That's different. But my point is, like, you need to understand that sweets are not technically the main meal for kids. So they are part of the meal as a dessert, and they learn to eat it as a dessert. Yeah, but
sometimes, for example, he said, like, are you hungry? I always ask, are you hungry? No, I think I'm fine. And then chocolate,
but cookies, he's not hungry. That's emotional eating.
It's emotional.
Yes, that has nothing to do with hunger.
Okay, so how?
Because you know that. Sorry, if you are hungry, you have physical symptoms of hunger.
Yes.
Him taking the chocolate is boredom, habit, emotional. It's there. I know it tastes good, but it's not hunger. It's emotional. I mean, whatever it is. Like, in most cases, it can be also just boredom.
And how to recognize, how to help your teen with if he actually or they have this disorder.
I mean, in the beginning you will not. Yeah, in the beginning you might not notice that there is a disorder. You will notice though a change in the behavior around food, avoiding foods, eating a lot of other foods, hiding, measuring, like talking about food in a negative way, but then eating a lot of it. Like you will just notice something is off. They don't want to be with their friends. They don't want to do sports anymore.
So they can be like a distance from the...
Yeah. Isolated a little bit because something else is going on. And the approach should never be on the food. Like you should never talk to your kids like you gained weight, you lost weight, why you don't eat this? Like don't talk about the food. You need to understand what is going on underneath the problem and something is brewing there.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot do it, like you can get some help. But I mean, triggering kids with, oh, you gained weight, maybe we should ditch the chocolate. It's not, it's counterproductive. Because then what you might receive is either like, I'm not going to listen to you, I'm going to eat even more, or I am not going to eat anything to please you. And then they will go maybe the other route of not eating at all. But the whole point is that direct kind of enforcing this looks and the food, you are putting emphasis on something which is visible, but that's not the problem. That's the consequence of something underneath, a deeper underlying problem. And you need to figure that one out. And that usually goes through talking and kind of understanding what's going on in their life or talking to a specialist or something. But in my case, for example, the focus was always on the looks. So I focused only on the looks. How much I can eat, how much I cannot eat, how much I need to lose. But that was never the problem. Like the problem was underneath. But, I never even thought that the reason why I have such a complicated relationship with food is because I have some other issues. Because no one even told me, like, how are you doing? It was like, lose weight or gain weight, So, yeah. So or you have gained weight, but it's always about the weight.
Kind of toxic comments.
Yes, that has to go. That has to go. Because anyway, you might hear it online or from other people, but like in the family, it should be relatively a safe space, I would say, for kids to say what's on their mind and why they're eating like that and what's bothering them, because it's something. No one should dismiss a child because a child also has feelings and thoughts and, and much more probably confused because they don't understand what's going on. And I would say, for example, in my case, the biggest confusion probably happened around 12, 13, 14 when my body started to change and no one told me that my body will change. So I was like receiving these comments how I'm more voluptuous or whatever, but I thought it was a bad thing because I was never educated to think of these changes as something natural. So I always wanted to be like I was before, like a small girl, like skinny. That was always the thing in my head, like skinny, skinny, skinny. So yeah, I think because of that, you need to just kind of educate and also then talk to your child.
Can actually this eating disorder be passed through genes?
There is a genetic component, small one, but there is, yes. And it's partially genetics, yes, but the influence of the environment is much bigger. However, I'm not saying that genetics is not present, it is, but the environment is stronger. So let's say if you grew up in an environment where people were very, very focused, and maybe the parents didn't have a diagnosis, maybe they were just like too healthy, call it however you want. But their strictness with food rules, what's allowed, what's not allowed, the comments, the body shaming, the fat shaming, you can easily just look at the child kind of like a small sponge, picking up on all these ideas and forming some also their own a little bit twisted relationship with food. The problem is that when, for example, the child picks up on these things from the parent who is supposed to know the best, okay, like the absolute truth, they take it as the absolute truth. Like chocolate is bad. Don't eat after 6. And then if they eat the chocolate, they feel horrible. And then they might binge because like, okay, today I will do it, but then no more because I know it's bad. For all these, let's say, rules or them gaining weight, they will immediately try to lose it because it's a picked up behavior that has never been questioned. Like, does this actually make sense? We don't question for the most part, and for the longest time, what our parents are telling us about food. And listen, they are also picking up this knowledge from, I don't even know from where, God knows where, some knowledge and some experiences. And they're saying things to you like, you should lose weight because you will not get a husband, you will not get a job, you will not be successful, you will not be pretty, you will be isolated. So you take this as the absolute truth that in order to be accepted, pretty, you need to look a certain way. You will do everything and put your body as like this project. You will do everything to have the body. And then the parents will praise you. And then you will be happy because every child always wants to get the validation from the parents. And that's how this very, very twisted, distorted cycle with parents works. And the parents are like, oh, my child is so good. And then in front of other people, look at her.
But now
she's so perfect.
You have two kids. How you teach them
about food?
About food, yeah.
Complicated because they also hear things from outside of our house. Like in our house, we don't talk about good foods and bad foods. Like I really don't like that. We don't talk about bodies. We don't talk about being fat, slim, whatever. So it's not the topic of conversation. However, my older son, because he's doing sports, I see that they are trying to kind of indoctrinate them, eat healthy foods. Do you know what I mean? Like have a healthy diet. And so for the longest time,
Why?
To be kind of like better at sports. He's 12, by the way. So he's not like a professional who makes a living out of this and has to use his body to perform. Nevertheless, I tell him there are foods that are better maybe for your performance, and there are foods that are, fall into some other categories. They're like sweets. None of them are better or worse. They just have a different value nutritionally. And I explained to him literally like this one has more, protein, this one more carbs, this one more fat, different calories. They're all just foods. For you to maybe have a healthier life, you should probably eat a bit more of these and a bit less of these, but you should never remove anything out from your life. And what I noticed is that if I would say to my kids, we don't have anything sweet in the house, I make some kind of a small experiment. My God, they will only talk about sweets. The mere idea that they don't have it will create that anxiety. Like, but what if I want it? Okay. When we have it and when they know it's there, they don't want it as much. Yeah, because they know it's like it's available today, tomorrow, after tomorrow when you want it. And many times I will tell them, oh, guys, I made a cake. Do you want something? Some, slice? And they will say, no, not now. I'm not hungry, or I don't want it, or I'm full, because they know it can happen tomorrow. But if you say there is no sweets, or like there's nothing sweet to eat in the house, they will ask, why not? Where are the sweets? Like you have created a very uncomfortable situation for them, that something is forbidden, and no one likes the forbidden things. Like then you think about.
I remember before when we didn't have that much sweet and like variation of food. We went to another country and there's all inclusive, all this.
You eat everything.
Everything.
Because but again,
you blame yourself.
Exactly. But you know that when you come back and for the foreseeable future, you will not have access to those foods.
Yeah.
Therefore, you like now is the chance. And that can be translated to traveling abroad, which still many people do, although nowadays you have most of the food everywhere, but still. But it can also be in your own home. When someone brings a cake, you're like, today the cake is here, but then after the weekend it should be gone. So the whole cake needs to be eaten this weekend. Why?
Yeah.
Technically you could eat it on a Tuesday, on a Thursday, on a Monday, then in 2 weeks. I mean, maybe not in 2 weeks because it will be bad, but you don't have to eat it all now, But you have to in your mind, if you know that from Monday it's done. We start fresh. Then it's like, okay. And the worst thing is that if you eat the cake, you will feel so guilty for how much you have eaten, then you will start eating some other random things that also bother you. Oh, this bread there should not be there. I'm going to cut also on bread. I'm going to cut on chips. I'm going to cut on, sodas. And then it will be a massive binge that started with just one slice.
Do you have any statistic or some, like with your experience, that eating disorder is happen more often in one country, in some country than in other?
there used to be a statistic that it's happening more in Western cultures that have an abundance of food, like binge eating disorder. Like you need to have a big amount of food to qualify as a binge eater. So it was more rich countries for sure, like Europe, United States, Canada, way more than Latin America, Africa, and stuff like that. Like Western countries had a bigger.
Oh, but what is the fact? Why?
Because of the availability of the food. If you live in a country, and this now why obesity is such a big problem everywhere nowadays, is because the availability of the food is like never before. You can buy food anywhere. Like you don't have to walk anymore to go to the store, like somewhere far away, right? You can order through a robot to bring you the food home, or delivery guy. Like you don't have to move from your home. So whenever you feel that you would like to eat or binge, the insane selection of food on your phone is out of this world. Let's say in my days, we didn't have the apps. I had to go to the shop on purpose, embarrass myself in front of everyone in the shop to buy this massive amounts of food and say that it's for the family. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just sit at home and order the pizza, the donut. I think now the availability that every moment you get triggered and uncomfortable, that you can switch it to feeling great by using food that is always available. You have a fridge, you have a pantry, you have a freezer, you can just eat all the time. It's very convenient. It's, you cannot get drunk all the time because, if you want to be functional, you cannot be drunk all the time. You cannot be high all the time. You cannot gamble all the time, but you can all eat a lot and get out of the food coma and then continue. And just